Hello and welcome to Undercommon Taste. This is a podcast where we create and discuss homebrew content for tabletop RPGs.
Adventure is just bad planning.
I'm Ian Woodworth. I'm joined by my co-host James Daly.
And we're going on an adventure.
We're going on an adventure. Because we've both had very eventful weekends, and I have like 2 days to edit this episode once we get it recorded. And so we are going to record an episode that hopefully does not require a whole lot of editing on my part.
Yes. We are also both neurodivergent and working on a minimal spoon count.
Yes, and working on multiple projects outside of the podcast as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we've been a little busy. And so tonight we have decided that what we're going to do is something that we haven't done in a while, which is more or less do a state of the podcast episode.
Yeah, and I think this is a really good time to do this. We're coming up on a new year, and towards the end of the last year, with decisions made by large corporations, we decided to kind of step back and not make a huge shift, but a significant shift. And I think it's fair to discuss this with our listeners and our fans.
Yeah, I would agree. Mainly, the goal that we are working towards has been predicated by the fact that Hasbro has been doing some very Hasbro things. Between the OGL debacle, that it's hard to believe that was
a year ago.
Yeah, that was January of last year.
Yeah.
December 23 to into January and February of 24. It feels like it's been so much longer ago. It feels like it's been 3 years since that happened. But yeah, that all happened last year. But between that and the AI art accusations that came in with, was it Bigby's Guide to Giants or something? It was one of the books that I didn't pick up.
Yeah.
I have not picked up a WotC product since the Planescape bundle came out. That was the last thing I bought, and that was the only thing I bought in 2023.
Yeah. No, that's
or was it 24? I can't remember. Like I said, it's been a hot minute.
Planescape was 24, I believe.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, regardless. Yeah, because it came out after the OGL debacle.
It did.
OGL was the reason I stopped buying things.
Yeah.
And just, I really wanted Planescape, so I broke my rule to buy Planescape, and then
that is an amazing bundle.
It is. I haven't used it yet.
Fair.
Like a majority of my D&D books, it has sat unused on the shelf. And that's a big chunk of the reason why I stopped buying them as well, is because, I was spending $50 a book for decoration for my bookshelf.
Yeah.
And there are far better things I can do for $50 a book.
Exactly. Now, for me, I have not picked up, and I intended to, and I just haven't. I will pick up the new DMG Player's Handbook and Monster Manual from WotC at some point. I've not yet, but I will pick them up. But I agree, as much money as Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast have, as huge as the community is with creators and artists, I don't want to say it this way because it sounds cold, but they could literally grab any of the community artists they want who make amazing art, fantastic art, and they could pay them an absolute pittance and say, yeah, we're going to pay you a pittance, we're going to use your art, but you're going to get credit in the book, and they would squeeze themselves to death over it. They would.
I don't know about any of them.
No, maybe not any of them, but a large percentage would be happy to do it for, and I'm not saying, like, obviously some pay. I'm not saying, 10 cents for a picture, but they wouldn't have to pay a premium. They wouldn't have to. They could find, what I'm saying is they could easily find artists that would do it for less and credit in the book. And those creators would be happy to do it. Should we pay our artists more? Absolutely sure, because again, a lot of them make wonderful, wonderful art.
And there are plenty of independent presses that do pay good rates for artists, and we should be supporting them.
Absolutely. But to take the community of fans and artists and creators and basically flip on the bird and say, no, we're going AI because it's cheap and everyone likes AI because it's trendy right now, like everything back in the 90s and whatever bad bubble you want to pick, it really is a slight to the creators of the community who have done so much to support your product to begin with.
And they're forgetting the fact that the only reason why 5th edition is as popular as it is right now is because of the community.
Yes.
It is because of shows like Critical Role and the McElroy brothers. These are the things that really brought it back into the public eye after it fell back into obscurity during 4th edition.
Yeah, because they kind of turned their shoulder and said, oh, this thing looks trendy, forget what the fans want, we think this is going to, and they're making the same exact mistake now again. That said, as we talk, there's a lot of independent presses out there, and we want to focus kind of a bit more on some of those independent, because they make amazing stuff. And as Ian says, you can drop $50-$60 on a Wizards of the Coast book, or you can buy 5 or 6 entire games for the same price that are just as good, if not better.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've started really expanding my collection, and you can get entire games for the same price as a splat book for D&D or less.
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty sure that my Blades in the Dark book was like $30. I'm pretty sure that my Monster of the Week book was about $30. My Old Gods of Appalachia book, I think it's $50 cover price. I'm not entirely certain how much we paid for it because my wife backed the Kickstarter for me and got it for me as a gift. So I'm not entirely sure what the actual price on that was, but I'm pretty sure it's about a $50 or $60 cover price. But it's the entire game in one book.
I grabbed Action 12 Cinema, strangely enough, $12.
Yeah. Right.
And honestly, Action 12 Cinema, I played this with one of my D&D groups. We had an impromptu where we didn't have enough characters for the full thing. I'm like, hey, I'm pulling this out of my back pocket as a one-off. And they loved it. And they're like, okay, when can we do this again? They came expecting D&D. We did Action 12, and they were asking not, hey, when are we going to play D&D again? When can we do Action 12 again?
Right, because it's novel, it's new, it's not the same old grindy D&D game.
Yeah.
And there are so many creators doing so many fun and interesting things with so many different systems that it's a disservice to not check out what they're doing. I mean, whenever the whole game costs $12, if you buy it and you play it and you don't like it, you're out $12.
I have spent more on much, much worse. And again, my personal gold standard for misspent money was I spent $20 on the live action Avatar: The Last Airbender. It was terrible. It cost 2 hours of my life. It was $20. It was like my last $20 for the week. It was kind of like a lean time. We're like, okay, you know what? I've got $20. This is going to be a good movie. I'm in. And it was abysmal. And so that is my gold standard for misspent money. $20, Avatar: Last Airbender, live action.
Yeah, I think mine would be when I was in college and I went with some friends to watch Meet the Spartans.
Oh, yeah.
That was not a good movie.
That was not money or time well spent.
No, and I should have known better.
Yeah.
Because when I was in high school, I was part of the teen reporter page for the local newspaper, and one of the things that I did was periodically do movie reviews. And I had reviewed, was it a superhero movie?
Okay, yeah.
So it's the same people who did the Scary Movie franchise. Whenever they decided that they were going to branch out and do other genres of stuff, very, very poorly.
Yeah.
And Meet the Spartans was the next movie that they did after that. And I should have known better than to even do that. At least with superhero movie, I got reimbursed my ticket price.
Fair.
The newspaper reimbursed me for seeing that. I was completely out for the second one, and it was entirely my fault.
Yeah. So going along with this, we are going to have other creators on talking about the game system that they've created and the thought process they put behind their game. One of the things Ian and I had talked about, though, is we don't want to just be an interview podcast. Ian and I are both interested in creating games. And so this does delve back into, as our thing, homebrewing and world building. So we do want to touch on aspects of how to create your own game so our listeners can kind of, if they have that interest in, hey, you know what? I can create my own game. I've got a great idea I want to see on the table. We want to start kind of pulling in together resources and ideas and laying down some fundamentals of, okay, you want to make your own game? Great. How do you do that? What are the fundamental pieces you need? What are the ideas you want to do? What's your foundation? How do we get, what makes a good game a good game? What are the things a person needs to put together to have a product or just to have a fun event that you can do. And so this is another thing that we're going to try to explore at least over the next year or so.
Right, yeah. That's the idea in an eggshell. So, yeah, talking to some other people about the games that they're creating, talking about other systems and how to implement them in game design, and then also talking about some system agnostic things. Like, I am slowly teaching myself how to do layout. And so talking about some of the tools that are available for doing layout, some of the reference materials, maybe bringing on some people to have conversations about what sort of things do you look at for layout? What are the things that will really set you apart from everybody else? What are the sort of boring things that you want to avoid? Elements like that. Another thing is like how to find art, how to place art, how to do art orders if you're asking artists to make art for you so that you are clearly conveying what you're looking for so as to not waste your time and the artist's time in getting the piece that you're looking for your work.
Yeah, layout's very important. I mean, if you look even at D&D, and I'm sure we will be referencing D&D a lot still because it is a big fundamental part, at least for me, of how I learned a tabletop game. I know it's a big part of Ian's too. But so many people were brought to D&D and tabletop gaming in general from the books, from the layout, from the art, how things were presented. How clunky do you want your rules to be? Do you want tables that specify every possible scenario, or do you want something that's kind of like, hey, here's this, and wing it?
And another thing that you have to keep in mind whenever you're looking at those books is they are books that are put together by teams of dozens of people. And so if you are creating your own game, you don't have the benefit of all of these professional experts in their field working together to make your game look nice.
Yeah.
And so there comes a point where you have to realize your own limitations and how to expand them.
Yeah. That said, again, layout's good. Even if you're not wanting to make your own game, things Ian and I have touched on a lot is a lot of the world building things we do are great writing prompts. And if you want to get into creative writing, if you want to write your novel or your story or your serial, a lot of these threads are going to run together. And so how do you create your world? What ideas do you use? And we're really going to kind of get a little deeper into that whole world building and kind of creating things from the ground up aspect as well.
Right. And to piggyback off of that, it's not all about writing a game. You don't, as a game designer, you don't always have to be creating a new game. This also covers writing modules for existing games.
Absolutely.
And figuring out how to take that system and tell your compelling story in a way that works in that system.
Yeah, there is no need to completely reinvent the wheel every time. And even with these systems, I mean, things that Ian and I have done with D&D is like, hey, here are aspects of D&D that we think are overlooked, like exploration. Here are things that we want Amai to do in the meantime, like mini games or fun little side quests. And yeah, you know what? Here is my Powered by Apocalypse game, ABC, and I love it. But you know what? I want to run these little side quests I want to offer. I think they'd be kind of neat. And so you get together, you and your friends get together, you start writing down, and all of a sudden, here's an appendix of side quests for this set scenario, this set game. Put it on Twitch, put it on RPG Drive-Thru, and you're published, and you're going with it. And that's all that's all it really is.
I know what you meant to say.
Okay.
You meant to say itch and Drive-Thru RPG.
Yes.
And not Twitch and RPG Drive-Thru.
Yes, those. Again, brain melting.
We've had a very eventful weekend.
Yes.
Like, I literally just got home from a 5-hour drive from a weekend trip. So, yes, we're both a little crispy at the moment.
Yeah. But again, you can make these just side modules for the project or the games you like. And again, that's a great, and hey, here's this, and play it, and it's fun. And if it goes no further than you and your friends play it, and you just have this bundle that you can pull out cards for, you're like, when your game's feeling still, well, I've got this extra thing. Oh my God, you're an amazing DM. That's great. Or again, if you publish and sell the game or give it away, or, and you reach hundreds or thousands or millions of people, it all starts in the same place.
Right. It all starts from actually taking that step to put it together and set it out into the world.
Yeah, so that's things. Now, again, we will still have guests, and again, we are still planning on bringing your guests in. I really enjoy our interviews. I get to learn so much about the community and what's out there, and really kind of needing to feel the game community now. It's just, again, it's winter, it's gray, it's rough out there, and so again, just that sense of community is a wonderful, wonderful thing anyway. So yes, we will have more guests on. We are going to be talking about stuff. So again, there's still going to be a lot of the same, just a little different because we're going to focus less on D&D specifically. We might touch into Pathfinder some. Ian and I neither have a whole lot of experience with Pathfinder, but you know what? Now is not a terrible time to explore new things either.
Yeah, I really want to expand the scope of what we're doing and try and get a little more into the system agnostic advice.
Yeah.
And start getting into a bit more of the design aspect of everything. Because there are so many games out there that are not your traditional D20 fantasy games like D&D and Pathfinder. I mean, as we've already mentioned a couple of the times so far, you know, Blades in the Dark or the Forged in the Dark system, the Powered by the Apocalypse system, Matt Colville's Draw Steel game, that is looking really interesting, and I really want to dive into that. I haven't gotten around to joining his Patreon to get access to all of that. That might happen at some point a little bit later on this year.
Even Kids on Bike was great. When we had our holiday special, we played Kids on Bikes, and one of our players had never played Kids on Bikes before. And afterwards, they were like, I had never played this. This was great. You know, I was kind of getting tired of, you know, just the constant combat from D&D. And so this was, you know, very different. And they were very, very happy with how the system ran. And honestly, Kids on Bikes it's a really fun system to play. It's more role play heavy. And so you get more of that improv going versus, you know, just throwing math rocks. But when you're sitting with friends and kind of that play of the mind and that quick banter back and forth, it is a ton of fun.
Yeah, and I don't think that we actually played it right the way that we were playing it in our holiday game. I think that it was still a little too much tied to our experience of D&D play, where the person running the game is calling for roles and such. Whereas it's supposed to be a little bit more driven by all of the players and declarations of, well, this is what is true.
Okay.
And things of that nature. Because one of the things that happened a couple of times is I asked for, was it intellect rolls?
Yeah.
To see if people noticed things. And I don't think that is ever actually supposed to happen per the rules of the game. I think it's supposed to be something where, you know, somebody is looking for something and then the director asks them, okay, what did you find?
Okay.
You know, I think it was kept a little more on rails by me as the storyteller, as the director. Director is the word I'm looking for, than it normally should be.
I mean, and that's part of learning the systems, and that things like that is things we can discuss. And again, if you are building your own game or setting up, how much do you want a DM that is God behind a screen, or do you want it DM-less? Again, things like Action 12. We've played Old Gods Appalachia isn't DM-less.
No.
We've played a couple other DM-less systems, though, where everyone's just kind of playing together. And so everything kind of comes through by, you know, kind of hive mind from the game party. And so depending on how you want to do that, those are options for playing a game.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are also ways to engage in GM-less play using other established systems that don't have it set up for GM-less play. It requires a lot more work and a lot more setup and a lot of trust between the individual players in order to accomplish that. But there are ways to do that.
Absolutely.
And just the same as there are ways to play these games solo. You know, you can play D&D 5th edition solo. I wouldn't recommend it. It's not designed for that, and you're going to have a difficult time or a very labor-intensive time trying to do that. But it can be done.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's about where we want to be for the upcoming year. And like I said, we wanted to kind of sit down with our listeners and, you know, again, new year, it's kind of good to show you where we're planning on going. We hope you join us. We hope you tell your friends about us and more people can join us along. Like I said, It's largely going to be the same. It's just going to focus a little bit less on the 300-pound gorilla that sits wherever it wants.
Yeah.
We are going to eat the elephant one bite at a time.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've mentioned it before on the podcast. James and I have a game. It was James's idea, and I ran with it. That it is a tarot-powered solo journaling game that is written, and I am working on the layout of it.
Layout is the tricky part, and that's why Ian does it.
And it's very labor intensive because you're also editing as you go, and you are trying to figure out, okay, what font size do I need to use in order to make everything fit right, and what font do I need to use to make it look right, and where am I going to find this font? You know, falling down the rabbit hole of open source fonts on the internet. You know, where am I going to find images to put art in the book? It's a whole slew of stuff.
Now, this kind of goes around the side. So, I brought this idea up with Ian. I was inspired by one of my teachers while I was finishing my undergraduate. But I'm like, hey, here's this. And Ian's like, yeah. And so Ian has put these things together, and I've seen what Ian has, and it's amazing. I love it. It wasn't 100% what I had envisioned, so I will probably take the same idea, and I'm going to do the same thing a little bit different. And then I'm going to have my reformation to Ian's game, and it's going to drive him insane because this time he does not get to be Martin Luther. So,
That's all right. That's all right. I already know that I'm still going to be editing the text because
yes,
your work is inevitably going to have a bunch of typos in it.
Oh, inevitably, yes. I am terrible at any kind of spelling or grammar. My writing skills are abysmal on the best of days if someone's being absolutely polite. But again, with this, you can take a system or a game that you really just enjoy the heck out of and be like, I think this is great, but I just want to tweak this with it. I think it could be a little bit better or a little bit different and more my flavor. And flavoring of a game is, again, the purpose of a game is to have fun. And if you can tweak something and make it just a little bit better for you and your group, do it.
Right. Yeah. And there are whole environments of games. All of the Forge in the Dark games are because they liked John Harper's Blades in the Dark system. All of the Powered by the Apocalypse games are because people liked the system that was laid out in Apocalypse World. Within the OSR, you've got games like you've got Cairn, which was based off of the system set up by Chris McDowell in Into the Odd, which is in turn based on the Black Hack of original D&D, the Black Box. So, there's a whole lineage there of games where one inspired the next, inspired the next, inspired the next. And so this sort of medium of game design thrives on that. It really does, you take something that you like and you say, I need to adapt this for my purposes, and then you tweak a little bit of it and you end up with a completely different game.
Yeah. So you can take any AAA game that's out now on console or Steam particularly, and there is a grocery list of mods that people, hey, I want this, but I want this in the game instead. And that's really what we're covering is how to mod your tabletop game.
More or less.
Create your own, yeah. And so here, let's make mods.
And I've also talked about how I started writing a game that was my adaptation of... See here, my game was inspired by Pavel Dombowski's hack of Jason McCall's unfinished Fallout pen and paper game. And it has morphed and evolved over the years to the point where now I have finally abandoned the D100 system.
Quitter.
I couldn't make it make sense to keep it,
Fair. No, that's
everything was turning into being far more easily managed on a D10 system than a D100 system, and it just made more sense to simplify everything because
that makes total sense.
Because it meant less math.
Yeah.
And anything that can speed up play at the table is good.
Generally, yeah. And those tables are going to be much, much smaller now.
That is true. That is true. And who knows, maybe I will finally get the courage up to actually start presenting some of that here on the podcast in the coming year. talking about the system that I'm using and why I have decided to use this system and not something else, and talking about the changes that have happened to the system as I have progressed through, what I have abandoned in order to get to where I am now, how the system has evolved over time, things like that. Just to give an idea of somebody who has a bit of experience in doing this, but is not a professional. And that might be something that you, as a listener, as an aspiring game designer, might find a little more relatable than listening to somebody like Chris McDowell or Patrick Stewart or Luke Gehring or, Johan Noor, who wrote Morkborg. I think Johan did the art and layout, but I digress. These big names, the Chris Perkins of the world, who are, professional, widely known names in game design, and it might be more difficult to relate to them because they've already hit all of these hurdles that I am currently running up into. And so they've already figured out how to get across them, and I am still figuring that out. And maybe my talking through how I am figuring out how to get across all of these hurdles will help you figure out, okay, I'm having the same sort of problem, but it doesn't sound like his solution is going to work for me. Instead, I'm going to try this.
Yeah, and I mean, even coming across and saying, I have writer's block here, or I'm stuck here. Oh, other people have been stuck there too, and they've figured a way around it. And again, as Ian said, his way might not be your way, but understanding that someone's hit the same hurdle and they're successful or they're getting stuff done means that you're probably on the right path. And that's generally inspiring. Hey, you know what? I'm hitting this roadblock. Other people hit this roadblock too. If they're hitting this, that means that I'm not completely lost in the woods. I'm just on the path.
Absolutely. And, talking back to our friends of the show over at World Build with Us, I am a nearly religious listener to their podcast. I'm on their Patreon. I listen to every episode, usually within a day or two that it comes out. But almost every single episode that they come out with, whenever they're talking about their tenets and talking about how they want to work within the confines of the setting that the listeners have provided for them, they list their tenets and they start talking about how they would interpret it. And my very first visceral reaction almost every single time is, but I want to do it this way.
Exactly.
And so I find that listening to other people talking about a prompt gets my creative juices going in a very different, very productive way, because instead of looking at a prompt and trying to figure out what it is I want to do with it, I look at the prompt and then I listen to someone else's interpretation of it. And that gives me the impetus I need to figure out what it is I don't like about their interpretation that I would do differently. And that just sends me going on what I do want to do.
And see, this is why Ian and I work together, because my brain works in a fashion that helps Ian with that, because my brain runs at a bajillion miles per hour. That's just one of my aspects of my neurospicing. So, like, there'll be an idea and and we can do this and this and this and this and this. And Ian's like, okay, I like that one. That one's terrible. That one doesn't fit. That one, not fine. But I like this one and this one and this one. And then, well, let's take all of these and twist it. And so, like, I mentally just kind of disgorge all of these ideas, and it's that kind of back and forth that Ian and I are really good at. And again, I've always talked about find someone that you can brainstorm with, because again, Ian can kind of go through with that and springboard off of my ideas in beautiful, wonderful ways that most people wouldn't be able to, and I definitely couldn't. And so, like I said, I really enjoy working with Ian for that reason.
I appreciate your use of the word disgorge, because sometimes whenever you get on a roll with your ideas, that is what it feels like.
Yes.
It feels like I am standing in front of the fire hose and I've got my little 1 gallon strawberry picking bucket. I'm like, this is all the water that I needed. It's like, and you're giving me about 300 times what I need.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
Yeah. But it's good because it allows me to cherry pick the best ideas that you have in a given situation. And then once I have cherry picked the best ideas,
he puts on his parka and I disgorge again.
Well, then the fire hose becomes a garden hose, and it becomes much more manageable.
Yes.
Because basically at that point, I am narrowing the scope.
Yeah.
And funneling down to where we get to the core, the nugget of the good idea.
Yeah.
And then that gives us something to build from.
Absolutely.
So yeah, James is my ideas guy. I have for a very long time suffered from analysis paralysis. If you give me a whole bunch of options just without any context, I will stand there for 30 minutes trying to decide which one I want. I hate going to new restaurants for that very reason. It is very difficult for me to choose something off of a menu, especially if it is a type of cuisine that I've not had before or that I haven't had in a very long time. Like, for example, there is a Vietnamese restaurant near us, Calm Bistro, there in Gray.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing food.
You want pho?
I don't.
You don't want pho?
Because I don't like my noodles still in broth.
Okay.
I want my noodles and my broth separate.
Okay, fair.
It's a messiness issue.
Okay.
I like both of the things. I just do not like them in the same container. And I can't remember for the life of me the name of the dish that I usually order, but it's just a big bowl full of stuff.
Is it the pan-fried ramen?
I don't think it's fried.
Okay.
I think, but it is noodles and all of the things, and there's a spring roll on top of it, and it is just amazing. And because I was just sitting there, my wife and I went with our friends, and they came to order, and everyone else ordered, and I'm still looking at the menu trying to decide, and Aaron just says, "You're having that one."
Yes.
And I'm like, okay. He's like, it's the last bowl that we have available for the day, because it was the last egg roll that they had, or the last spring roll they had for the day that went on top of it. It was amazing. And it would have probably fed 3 people, and I probably should have taken some of it home. But my unhealthy relationship with food is not the topic of today's episode, so we are not going to be talking about that right now.
But yeah, no, like I've said before, trying to put a bow on this, we do want to work on the quote modding community for tabletop games. How to make your own game, how to make your own addendum or appendix, what you're going to need to put in, where you can get good ideas, what kind of systems you can use that rely on a system or don't rely on a system agnostic, as it's called. What things make a game fun? We want to talk about like the actual nuts and bolts of a game. Why do you play tic-tac-toe for so many years? What's so good? Risk reward. How much chance or how much randomness can you have in something? Should you railroad and just tell a story? Or should everything be up to chance? I mean, all of these are things to consider. And I believe over time, we will explore all of these at various points throughout the year.
Yeah. And, this may extend into one of the things that I had an idea of trying to do at least a couple of times over the course of the next year, is how to take a piece of media and draw inspiration from it to create a module, or to create an adventure, even if it's a one shot or if it's something longer. Most recently, the piece that I really want to approach with this lens, it's a short story called The Garden of Time by J.G. Ballard. And it's a really interesting story. It's short. It's like 6 pages. And that's like 6 PDF pages of text. And I think it was the theme for the costuming for the most recent Met Gala.
Ooh,
and it's one of those things where it's obvious that the people who choose the theme for the Met Gala and the people who go to the Met Gala and dressed up for this, nobody actually read the fucking short story.
Oh, ouch.
Because
I have to read this thing now.
Yeah, I'll send you a link. It's in public domain, so it's up on... Actually, I don't think it's public domain. I think it's 1962, so it's not quite public domain, but it's up on the internet for free. Okay. I'll try and include it in the show notes. Like I said, it's a really quick read. It is in the style of sort of 50s and 60s fantasy science fiction. So it's not really good writing compared to what is being published today, but it is good writing in the short story context of the 60s.
Okay. I love 60s sci-fi.
Yeah, it has that voice to it. It has that
Oh,
the tone, the verbiage, the sentence construction where it's a little bit over the top.
okay.
If you're liking things like early Asimov, you're
Oh,
probably
yes.
going to
Yes, yes,
like
yes.
this one.
Awesome.
But yeah, and I want to talk about it and, figure out the beats for writing an adventure for it,
Okay.
for like doing a one shot or doing like a location dungeon sort of thing, using that as the inspiration. And then, maybe we both find some more media over the course of the year and we're like, hey, this sounds really cool. Let's make an adventure out of it.
I like that. You have inspired me with an idea. But I think something we might consider is let's find something like that and we make that little one-shot dungeon and then we examine it under different game types or different mechanic types. So like maybe something's powered by the apocalypse and do the same thing under Kids on Bike, doing the same thing under any other type of game mechanic engine and seeing how it runs under each and see how the same thing changes with whatever engine you apply to it.
Right. I mean, I could definitely, having read this story, I could definitely see making a solo game using Chris Bissett's Wretched and Alone system.
Yeah. Okay.
Because there is the finite resource of the time flowers. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail here. You're going to have to it's 6 pages. You can read it. But there's a pretty good correlation between the time flowers in the story and the Jenga tower.
Okay, yeah, I have to pick up a Jenga tower in the next few weeks.
Because when they run out of time flowers, everything ends.
Okay.
And so at the end, whenever the tower collapses, that's when you've run out of time flowers and it ends.
Okay, I like it. I really need to read the story now.
Yeah. All right. I think we have prattled on and rabbit holed enough for one night. Thank you, everyone, for listening to us ramble on. Hopefully we didn't bore too many of you to tears. If you have any comments, suggestions, or ideas, or if you have games or systems or, design questions that you want us to answer, to contemplate, to do entire episodes on, please send us an email, undercommontaste@gmail.com, or come and join our Discord and ask us directly on the Discord. You can also find links to all of our social media through our website, undercommontaste.com. That also includes links to our itch page at undercommontaste.itch.io and our Patreon, patreon.com/undercommontaste. I am hopefully going to start actually putting more content up on the Patreon again. It's been a hot minute, and it's the inertia of not having done it for a while makes it hard to get back into it. So hopefully I can get some more content up there, actually start putting some content on the website.
Yeah, we need to build up that a bit more too.
Yeah, I've been busy. You've been busy. We're all busy.
Yeah. So if this is your first time listening, we're happy you found us. If you're old friends, thank you again for joining us. We hope you join us in this upcoming year. If this is your first time, you can find our other podcasts on your podcatcher of choice. Just search
If this is your first time, please go listen to a different episode. I promise that they're better.
Yeah. Again, we've done a lot of deep delving and world building. We focused a lot on D&D 5e, but go find our other episodes under Common Taste. Just search on your podcatcher of choice. You can also join me on Monday and Thursdays on Twitch under Common Taste. That's twitch.com/under Common Taste, where I am currently playing Darkest Dungeon on Mondays and Neverwinter Nights on Thursdays. Again, we talk about gaming. We talk about just ramble chat while I play about what makes those game elements good. What are, map building, things like that. Join us for that. As I finish those, we'll be playing something different as well.
Yeah, and we had Kat on last episode talking about Solo But Not Alone.
Yes.
Unfortunately, she has run into some issues with some people not contributing their links to the bundle. And so as of recording, the bundle still isn't live yet. So it's coming. She has assured me that she has assured me that it is coming. But last time I talked to her, she was in discussion with Itch on trying to get those games removed from the bundle without having to completely redo the bundle.
Oh.
And I don't know if she was able to accomplish that or not. So she might be in the process of rebuilding the bundle from scratch in order to get a new link and all of that. Hopefully, it is going to be coming out very soon. I really hope it is, because I look forward to that bundle every year, and I want to get my hands on those games.
Yes,
and start talking about them. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we will have a bundle soon, and I will try and get a little more active on social media so that we can help promote whenever the bundle goes live. Hey everybody, Ian here from the editing room. I'm here to inform you that the Solo But Not Alone 5 bundle is finally live. I have a new link to that bundle. It is in the show notes. Go check it out. It's awesome. But yeah, anyway, I think that's it for tonight. So stay safe, everyone, and we will see you again in 2 weeks.
Happy gaming.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Undercommon Taste. Our theme song is Massacre Ann, written and performed by Mary Kroll and used with permission. You can find Mary online at marykroll.bandcamp.com or on Patreon at patreon.com/Dr. Mary C. Kroll. Our logo is by David Sutherland. You can find more of David's work on deviantart.com/David Sutherland or on instagram.com/Willex_73. We'll be back in 2 weeks, so stay safe, and we'll see you then.